There's a pretty one, Ulysses. There it is.
I'm here with Ben of Doomantidote. This is a special treat. We've met face to face, and he's as hairy in real life as he is on his videos. Well, I mean, I'm seeing through Zoom, so it's kind of the same thing. And he hasn't made any flattering comments about my hairstyle, but I'll deal with it. I'm Shawn, the Book Maniac. Welcome back to my channel, and this is Ben from Doomantidote. I just have to say that Ben is one of those rare booktubers who arrived on BookTube fully formed. Like, his very first video was pristine. Well, pristine is not quite the right nuance that I want to put, but he's just such a articulate and entertaining, dramatic young man with excellent reading tastes, except that we almost never agree on a book, which is making this chat on Zoom fascinating because we don't know what each other thinks yet about the novel under discussion, and we often disagree. Like, we haven't done a buddy read. We don't, but just watching each other's videos, you know, a book that I loved, he kind of didn't think so much of, and vice versa. Often. So I think that pretty much everybody on my channel, Ben, knows about you, but for the three out there that don't, I'd like you to give an elevator pitch for Doomantidote.
Oh God. Go. Okay. So yes, my name is Ben and my channel is called Doomantidote, and it's basically kind of just a run-of-the-mill booktube channel. I do monthly wrap-ups and that sort of thing. Yes, I like to have a bit of fun with it. I like to not take things too seriously, but I do read a lot of kind of like dirgy, not dirgy, but a lot of kind of like stuff, like, you know, the canon and all the rest of it. So and literary fiction and stuff.
Yeah,
so
me too.
Yeah, but yeah, we have a bit of fun and we sort of have a laugh and see what happens, and yeah, that's what Doomantidote is.
What was the last book you read that you loved? And will I have hated it? Let's see.
I've got them here. So I've just finished flipping Don Quixote, which was interesting. I read I don't know whether I loved it, but have you read Box Hill by Adam Mars Jones?
Not yet. I was hoping to get to it for Pride Month this year, but I didn't.
So, I mean, this isn't, I'm not really answering the question because this isn't a book that I really loved, but I just, it really surprised me because I thought it was going to be a book that I would hate, but just because of the subject matter. But no, it turned out it was all right.
No, I like him. I really loved I've read two novels, the only two that have been published of a projected trilogy. The first one in the John Cromer series is Pilcrow, and the second one was Sedelia. I particularly loved Pilcrow, and I liked but didn't love Sedelia. And so I'm a fan of Adam Mars Jones. So that's great.
Yes, it's very uncomfortable. It's very it's very silly and very uncomfortable and very like, but no, I liked it.
Great. That's not why we're here today. We're actually here to talk about a book that we have both read, but we don't know, like I say, we haven't discussed it. We didn't do that traditional buddy read where we check in after the 3 chapters or whatever. So we're going into this Zoom chat blind, and the novel under discussion here is by Rhys. Her, I believe it's her second novel, and we have 2 different editions. After Leaving Mr. Mackenzie, published in 1931, I want to say.
Yes.
Yeah.
I love this cover. Can I just say,
I'm going to put it, I want to give you this big space.
Look at her. She's just everything, isn't she?
Is it her?
I think so.
Rhys?
No. I think this is Juliet. I think this is
Julia. Great. Great. And mine is a much more modern edition. And actually, now that I look at the photograph more for the first time since I finished the book, it actually fits into the story, doesn't it?
Yes, it does.
Woman on the bridge. Just
Woman on the bridge.
So we don't know what each other thought, and Ben has kindly agreed to indulge me by doing this childish ritual where I'll put us on side by side. We're going to share our reactions using body language. So we like it. We thought it was so-so, or we didn't like it, and we're going to do it simultaneously. And so we got to make sure we get our hands in the center of the screen so that the gestures are actually visible. So I'll count to 3. 1, 2, 3.
Yay!
We agreed. Oh, this is going to be such a boring conversation. Yeah, I loved it. I would give it 5 stars. It's my first anything by Jean Rhys, and I was absolutely fascinated by it.
Yeah, same. I have read her other one, the Wide Sargasso Sea,
Okay.
which I think, yeah, completely different, completely different, both in subject matter and tone, I think.
Sure, and in the era, because the Sargasso one came out after a long break from writing or being published. This was, I believe, her second novel in 1931. Why don't I put you on the spot, and why don't you set it up, the premise of this novel, Ben?
Oh, okay. So, I'm not going to read the blurb.
Oh, actually, before we do that, why don't we talk about spoilers? We think that the first section, which is maybe the first third of this novel, we're not going to think of that as spoilers. But once we start talking about stuff that happened in the final 2/3, we will give you a warning. And if you don't want to hear spoilers, you can stop watching at that point. All right. Over to you, Ben.
So the novel follows Julia, who is in, I believe, her mid-30s, and she has come out of a very bad breakup affair with Mr. Mackenzie, and she is currently residing in a hotel in Paris, and she is receiving a monthly income from Mr. Mackenzie. Until the start of the novel, she receives an envelope from his lawyer to say, "This is your last payment. You should make arrangements to kind of, do whatever you need to do." So yes, and so the novel starts off with her going, "Oh, where am I going to get money from, and who am I going to depend on, and who really cares about me?" And yes, we sort of follow her descent, her slow spiral downwards.
Maybe why don't we talk about the title? The title is After Leaving Mr. Mackenzie, but it's not quite accurate, is it?
No, yes, I hadn't thought of that.
I only thought of it because so it didn't come up with this out of my own brain, but I read something that said, there's kind of an irony, or there's just something going on with the title because he left her.
Indeed, yes.
So, I wonder what that's about. What was she up to giving it that title? She physically leaves him. She goes back to England from Paris, and that's beyond that. We'll get into spoiler territory later. But in that sense, she leaves him. But
yes, but she does sort of hang around a bit like a bad smell. She does sort of hang around a bit and sort of I don't think it probably takes, without going to spoiler territory, it probably takes the whole novel for her to really but then
yeah, and we'll get into that later. Yeah, so that's why I mean the title is really kind of enigmatic.
It is. It's the first time that I've really sort of thought about it, and it's like, oh, wait a minute.
Yeah, me too. I loved her, Julia. Yes. I found her a very attractive character, and she reminded me of protagonists in other novels that I've read. Particularly, I would say, is it The Driver's Seat or Driver's Seat by Muriel Spark?
Oh, I don't know.
The protagonist there. This Julia in this novel by Jean Rhys isn't quite that mentally ill, but there was I did really think a lot of the Muriel Spark novella as I was reading this. But yeah, this type of female character is really fascinating. She's down on her luck. She is past her best before date in terms of the patriarchy. She is not men are only attracted to her in certain times of the day or with a certain amount of makeup, and she is dependent on and resentful of her dependency on the men that she has kind of been involved in over the years.
Yes. She reminded me a little bit of Blanche Dubois, a little bit. She's not as deluded as Blanche Dubois.
Oh, yes, that's good.
She's not as deluded as Blanche Dubois. Like she knows kind of her circumstances, and she is in her reality, if that makes sense.
Depending on the kindness of strangers. The kindness of strangers, yeah.
Yes, exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
There was just something about her, especially with the sort of wanting to sort of look nice and spend the money that she has on clothes and stuff.
How would you describe, without going into spoiler territory, the overarching tone of this novel?
The overarching tone.
Was it depressing?
it's not depressing.
It's
a depressing
not.
story, but it's not told depressingly. This
Yes.
sort of like a sardonic-y type of vibe with it, because and maybe even like a voyeuristic vibe to it, because I was sort of like, oh, there is something about watching this person slowly disintegrate downwards, and so there is kind of like a kind of sardonic-y kind of like vibe to it. Do you think it's a compassionate novel towards her?
Oh, good question. Now you're putting me on the spot. Tit for tat. Compassionate. Yes, I do. Even though I don't think the future is very bright for our protagonist, there is a brightness in her that only occasionally comes to the surface, but there's a certain amount of hope that I have for her. Not that I really dwell on what might happen to my protagonist after the fictional text comes to a close, but if I can put it on that level, maybe this is a good time for me to share one of my favorite quotes from the novel, because this, I think, is Julia in a nutshell. She was crying now because she remembered that her life had been a long succession of humiliations and mistakes and pains and ridiculous efforts. Everybody's life was like that. At the same time, in a miraculous manner, some essence of her was shooting upwards like a flame. She was great. She was a defiant flame shooting upwards, not to plead, but to threaten. Then the flame sank down again, useless, having reached nothing. So that is Julia.
It is, because the series of humiliations, but then her, I get strength. I don't know, like her just determination to go, no, right, I'm going to put on my best glad rags on and I'm going to do the things. And even though I'm in my mid-30s and things, I'm not in my 20s anymore, I'm going to go out and I'm going to find a bloke who's going to, look after me. Even though she's had the same kind of thing happen over and over again, there is something kind of like, nope, it's worked before and it's going to work again. So, yeah.
Yes, and then juxtaposed against moments where she is rebelling against the structure of all that, and she's refusing to accept stuff from men, only momentarily. And that's where I think this passage really captures. There's a kind of a polarity between her wanting and striving for something, that kind of breaking out of this structure, but being trapped in it at the same time. And how many of us are like that?
Yeah, and then the increasing amounts of fatigue that she has of the novel, of just like, just sort of letting go and kind of just going, oh.
Yeah, there's a vagueness that is intensified by her exhaustion, and I think the exhaustion is psychological or emotional. She's just kind of at the end of a rope.
Yes.
So I don't know if I would. Certainly, I felt compassionate towards her.
Well, from that passage, I'd say that says yes. That the Jean Rhys admires her.
So, did you like any of the men in this novel, and were any of them better than any of the others?
No. I don't think so. I think because you've got Mr. Mackenzie, who's very kind of, he just wants to get rid of her, doesn't he? Although there is a pattern. She does attract a similar type of man who is, on one hand, kind of allured by her, but on the other hand is sort of not repulsed, but kind of sort of put off her a little bit. But she has a kind of magnetic quality that keeps these men kind of going, oh, well, we'll see how it goes, without really kind of acknowledging what that's doing to her.
Fully committing to the response. Can we say intermittently magnetic?
Yes.
Yeah.
I've forgotten who's the what's the name of the second guy?
The one that saw her slap Mr. Mackenzie?
Yes.
Yeah, Mr.
Horsfield. Is it?
Mr. Horsfield.
Yeah, so he's got this really arrogant kind of thing about him where he's like, well, I don't want to be in a relationship with you, but he likes the attention that he gets from her, and he kind of, this is something really sort of gross and sort of.
Okay, so here's our first disagreement, because I can see that people would read him that way, but I actually thought that there was, when he was feeling compassion, and sometimes even more than compassion, like attraction and desire, a romantic interest in her. It was intermittent too. Nobody had any kind of emotional response to anybody else in this novel that wasn't intermittent, but I believed him. But he was so screwed up too. But I thought that there were more than any of the other men. I actually felt that he did at times care about her, and maybe treated her the best.
I guess so. I mean, like the
I don't know.
You know, huh?
I don't know. Yeah, I'm still kind of thinking about it, but he came out on top for me. Like that maybe there was potential for him. Like he could have grown into kind of getting over his own neuroses and being with her.
Maybe. I mean, the bar is on the floor, but but yeah, sure, he's the best
one. Maybe what I'm really saying, I don't know if it's so much that I liked him, but that I thought he was the most interesting man in the novel.
Yeah, I mean, he's the one that we spend most time with. There's another sort of rich guy who's sort of just a bit, a former lover, isn't it? Who's
That's right.
And then you have the uncle, and so all these sort of men who are sort of like, okay, I've had my time with you now, just go away, please.
That's right. They're just really dismissive and wanting to get her out of their sight as fast as possible. Whereas he maybe just indulges her, but I felt, maybe I'm too idealistic, but I felt that he did have moments where he actually genuinely cared about her, even right to
that is true. That is true.
Last page. And what was fascinating, and this is not spoiler territory. So to me, one of the first really fascinating scene in this novel is when Mr. Mackenzie is in the restaurant and Julia goes in and sits down with him, and we go into his psyche, and there's Mr. Horsfield sitting at a nearby table, and that's how we meet him. He's sitting at a nearby table when Julia slaps him with her glove as slaps Mr. Mackenzie with her glove, and then storms out of the restaurant. And there's one of the moments where she refused his offer of more money, didn't she?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so that captures Horsfield's interest, imagination, and he doesn't. I saw some people writing about this novel said that he followed her. He didn't stalk her in a follow, but he did want to find her again, and he did find her again the same night and spends an evening with her. But there was something about that added a layer of complexity from the very beginning of his appearance in the novel.
I did like the style, because you do get these moments of going into the characters' heads, and then what they say is completely different. So I really like that.
Yes. And a lesser known British novelist writing around the same time that I have read 3 novels by, Ursula Orange. Her books have been back into print recently.
That's a name.
Ursula Orange, yes. And she does the same thing that Jean Rhys does.
Ursula Orange, darling.
Putting the real thoughts in parentheses with what they say. Yeah. So that was quite an effective thing. I was also really interested in the fact that Julia seemed more alive to and aware of or responsive to strangers on the street than she did with people that she actually knew. Did you notice that when she's walking down the street? She was so perceptive. Jean Rhys, makes her she's really aware of the people selling stuff, people walking down the street. She just seems to be more kind of clued into what's going on around her in an impersonal setting than she is when she's sitting with her sister or with any of the men. I was curious about that too.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, there's I don't know if this is spoilery or not, but sort of near the end, there's the guy sort of follows her, and then as soon as he kind of sees her, he sort of goes, "Oh God, no!"
Yeah, a teenager, young, really young guy.
She has to laugh, but all she does is laugh, because it's just like.
Yeah, that was fascinating. And it's one of several incidents where a man that makes her uncomfortable, a strange man is kind of following her or trying to seduce her. And that was the last one in the book. And it was an enigmatic response that she gave him, because he, I guess, thought she looked good from behind and assumed she was, and wasn't so
And she turns around and it's like, hello.
As one of my exes would put it, cute from far, but far from cute.
I want to talk about the family.
So shall we say that from here on in, we're not going to worry about spoilers? Mm-hmm. So if you care about spoilers for a novel published in 1931, this is where you should turn it off and come back after you've read the book, because we both highly recommend that you try this book. Definitely.
Yes, absolutely.
And so we are now officially in spoiler territory. And yes, the family was fascinating too. Tell us what you thought of the family.
So that's where the sort of Blanche Dubois kind of thing popped into my head. Apart from the fact that she's not deluded, she's not saying, "Oh, everything's great." She's very much in a I need help kind of mode, and being very honest. Like when her sister says, like, "Oh, you come here and you're in your fancy clothes and you expect money and help," and Julia's just like, "Well, I got fancy clothes because I wanted to look good when I came to see you," but so she's just very honest with them.
Yeah.
And then, but I suppose there's just a really deep, as with a lot of families, there's like these deep kind of long things of resentment and jealousy and all this sort of stuff, which sort of, because of the family circumstances, come to the surface and everything goes wrong.
And I thought that that was really quite nuanced. I mean, she takes us inside her family members. There's her sister and her uncle. Those are the only two that would. The mother is bedridden and uncommunicative, not able to communicate. But especially, I thought the sister was nuanced. Like we got inside her head, and she was having push-pull reactions. Sometimes she was loving, sometimes she was the complete opposite. And so was Julia to her. And I thought that was really well done. The death scene with the mother, I thought, was quite moving in a way that was not sentimental.
Yeah, definitely.
There's a deadness to Julia that I thought really worked with the deathbed scene at her mother's deathbed, because I haven't been in exactly that situation, certainly not with a parent, but where I often am. The main thing going on for me is that I realize I think I should be feeling a lot more than I'm feeling right now. I'm not feeling anything, and I'm kind of feeling stressed about that. And that was part of that scene that I loved. So
yeah, definitely can come out in really strange ways. I think she starts laughing at some point.
Yes.
Which just rang really, really true.
Yes, absolutely.
I'm talking about the nuance thing. I mean, their final sort of big argument, I thought was really well done, because that you can sort of see both of them have valid arguments.
Yes.
And if they were just able, in an ideal world, if we were just able to kind of tone down our kind of thing and sort of just listen to each other, they would sort of think, okay, we sort of kind of see things from the same thing, but because they're in this really heightened state of grief, I guess, and all this sort of past resentment, it just all comes bleh. And
Is her sister's name Nora? Yeah, Nora. Yes. Nora had been looking after the mother, who'd been bedridden since a stroke several years before, and she was completely exhausted, and she had been the only one taking care of her mother and all. And there's a quite moving passage with her saying, "Oh, everybody says, oh, you're such a good person," and blah, 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 but nobody made any attempt to help her. And so this renegade sister comes back at the last moment, and so she has some animosity about it, and I think we do see both sides of that. Whereas Julia feels like she has been treated as an outcast her whole life, or for most of her life, and she has a lot of resentment about that. So yes, it was a quite dramatic scene between them. And even the way she described it, after Julia confronts Nora, and then Nora goes sobbing into the other room where the old poop of an uncle is, and the nurse, I think, if some other people, and she's sobbing and she can harp it, and Julia can't really hear what she's saying. That just felt like I was in the room with Julia. Like that was so vivid. Oh my God, made me want to.
They've been waiting for an opportunity to kind of to cast her out, so it's just like, oh no.
The writing, I just thought, was just, it didn't feel like I've read a lot. I don't know how many 1931 novels you have read, or novels from the 1930s, but I've read a whole bunch, and this one felt much more contemporary.
Yes, I've read Somerset Maugham. Is he around that era?
He might have started that early. I'm not sure, but he certainly was around at that time.
Yeah, it does feel sort of very modern. It does feel very modern, and also because I have read Wide Sargasso Sea, and it's just so different, so different. Like this, because I was worried about reading this, because I mean, I really like this, but it's really dark and it's really kind of like it feels very literary and very kind of like, ugh. And then you get to this, and it's just completely different. A very interesting author.
Very interesting life. She was born in Dominica, and to a white father, well, to a British father, and the Wikipedia entry said she was born to a Creole mother, but that Creole at that time in Dominica didn't have to mean part black. So apparently she was fully white, but her mother's people were Scottish and had been on the island for generations. So she is fully white, but apparently she identified more with black people. I read a little tidbit that said that. She was cantankerous, and she was off the literary map for decades and came back with Wild Sargasso Sea. The biographical stuff, autobiographical stuff that I found out about this novel is that the only really famous man who is apparently Mr. Mackenzie. Mr. Mackenzie is apparently based on the British novelist Ford Madox Ford.
Oh.
And he took her under his wing because he loved her writing so much, and then he took her to bed. And he was in a common law marriage with another, I think, an Australian writer, but he had an affair with her. So the prototype for Mr. Mackenzie is Ford Madox Ford. Right. But even the original guy, Mr. James, that is based on somebody that I think was her first husband, and there's quite a lot of autobiographical resonance in this story. And I mean, for some people, knowing that deepens their reading experience. For me, I don't care. After the fact, I'm interested to hear it. But yeah. So
yeah, same, yeah.
Her debut was a short story collection, The Left Bank and Other Stories, 1927. And then the next year, her first novel, Quartet.
That's it, yeah.
And it is based on her affair and breakup with Ford Madox Ford. And apparently her the book, the collection of short stories, The Left Bank, was published by Jonathan Cape. And that is also, and Ford Madox Ford really helped her to get published by Jonathan Cape. And then she writes this really negative portrait of their star writer, Ford Madox Ford, in her first novel, and they don't want to publish it. So she gets that published by another publisher. And then her third novel also has Mr. Mackenzie. Her third book, second novel, also has a Ford Madox Ford character, but Jonathan Cape says, we don't care, we want to publish it. So they publish it.
Wow.
I love finding out those little gossipy things. Do you want, now that we're in spoiler territory, do you want to say anything about the actual ending, or will we just leave that for people to?
Yeah, because I was kind of worried. I was worried where it was going to go, because I was thinking like there is nowhere else for her to go.
I thought it might end with suicide or her death or something. She seemed to be on that path, but in fact, she goes back to Mr. Mackenzie.
Yeah. And I was sort of thinking when I ended it, I was thinking like, well, maybe the cycle continues, but really it can only really continue. Like this is like this can only be the last time, or even if it works out at all. So she gets a kind of one last
kick at the can. One last kick at the can.
Well, yeah.
Yet I didn't feel morose. I didn't feel depressed about it. There was such a vitality to her that she only intermittently accessed. And I just think that was the reality for a lot of women at that time. There was a sense of being deadened by the social mores. Even I love the fact that she was there was a sense of counterculture in this novel that didn't feel like a 1931 novel, and she embodied it, but it also was, in a sense, it was more than she had the psychological wherewithal to really capitalize on. I'm not sure about the words I'm choosing to try to get this thought out, but her vitality, as intermittent as it was, is what I will remember about her from this novel. So yeah, I loved it. Fantastic
Excellent.
work of literature. And
Yes.
very short. She does a lot in 185 pages.
It is a lot.
I have one other.
One.
Yeah, very short. I have one. I have her collected short stories here.
Oh, I would like to read more by her. I think this has sort of encouraged me to read more, because now that I know that she can vary heavily in styles, although this was much later,
right,
it'll be interesting to sort of read more of her.
Yeah, I think she might be one that I just start at the beginning and then carry on. One of the genius of the 20th century. Yeah, there she is. She lived to be like 90, I think. When she got back into the public eye with Wild Sargasso Sea, she said it's too late, and she just kind of rejected. Somebody wanted to get permission to bring one of her earlier books back into print, and they put an ad in the newspaper looking for her because everybody thought she was already dead, and she responded to that, and then she eventually published this novel, but she rejected all the trappings of fame in her later life, and she did write quite, I think, a handful of arguably some of her best books, and she was surrounded by lesbians and gay men at the end. Her publisher for I think Wild Sargasso Sea was Diana Athill, who just died a year or two ago, aged 103, a lesbian editor and publisher, I'm not sure exactly. And she was writing her memoirs with Francis Wyndham. Now, am I right to say that he was a big homo? I'm pretty sure I'm right.
I'm sure the gays loved her. If she was, a cantankerous, elderly lady, we do love those sorts of people.
Is this your strange way of telling me that you love me?
Yes, you're a cantankerous old woman, so yes.
I'll take it. I think Francis Wyndham was on our team, but I'm not finding in verification. In my brain, that's where it is. And the gay American, I think he was American writer, that Eric Carl Anderson used to be friends with. And he's like,
he does get around, doesn't he?
They had a falling out. This is not gossip. This is something Eric has spoken about on his own channel. He didn't give us the dirt, but he did say, and David Plant, Plante,
right,
was also closely connected to Jean Rhys at the end of her life. So fascinating. Ben, thank you. This has been great. It has been so fun. Let's do it again. What's the next book you're planning to pick up?
Oh gosh, I've just started.
Oh, okay. Well, good luck with that. You're a trooper. Thank you, Ben.
Thank you, Shawn.